there are some texts that are preached so much in church that it's very easy for them to become normal, or they don't surprise us anymore. I think the prime example of this is Jesus' parables. We hear them over and over and over again. And in their original context, presumably, and this is most likely true, they would have shocked people. They would have heard things that they didn't expect. But now for us, it's completely normal that a Samaritan would stop and help somebody. It's completely normal that a woman who struggles to find one coin, that's more valuable than somebody bringing a wealth of gifts to the temple. Of course, we believe that because we've heard it so much. So one of the challenges is to make things like the parable seem strange and foreign once again. One of the ways that this has happened to me, last week somebody preached at chapel about a concept called exegetical dislocation. And I think what they meant was that sometimes you need to change where you're reading scripture. So if you always read scripture to prepare for your sermon in your study, do it in a coffee shop, do it in a park outside, that in that movement of the body, you see something different. But it made me think of another kind of dislocation where we read scripture with new eyes. A scholar named Justo Gonzalez wrote specifically about the parable of the laborers. So the story is that someone who owns a vineyard comes to the market in the morning at 9 a.m. and hires some people. They go and they work. 11 o'clock, he comes back, hires some more, and again at 1 and at 3. So when it's time to get their day's dues, he starts with the 3 o'clock, and they get a full day's wage. People got hired at 9, all of a sudden think they're going to be in for a sweet deal this morning. I mean, they're going to get all this cash because they worked all day. These people only worked for 2 hours. Justo Gonzalez points out that in most middle-class churches, what people see there is injustice. That the people who worked all day should probably get paid more than the people who only worked for 2 hours. That the parable is primarily about God overcoming injustice. That God's justice is above our sense of justice. He notes that in Hispanic congregations, especially congregations of immigrants, of people who actually are at the Home Depot parking lot waiting to work on a Saturday and might stand there all day and not get any work, that for them this parable is not about injustice, but about God's ultimate justice. That it wasn't their fault that they waited in a parking lot or at the market all day and never got work. Their children, their families still have to eat. They still deserve a day's wage. They still deserve the basic necessities, at least the basic necessities of life. So in those congregations, that parable is not about injustice, but about the heights of God's justice. One of the challenges for us in the church is that so often the people who sit in the pews look just like us and live lives very much like us. How do we find ways to engage in conversation and read scripture with those who live lives so different from us, that see things that after you hear them, they seem so obvious? I should have always seen this, but it takes that encounter with someone who's walked a very different life, a very different path in life. All of a sudden, the Bible opens up to us. So when it comes to preaching those ordinary texts, those typical texts we always hear, it requires an act of theological imagination and also a step of courage to meet those that aren't like us.